how do we ensure that the business, building on sustainable principles, actually is looking at this not just from a geographical perspective or a networks perspective, but actually as a broader, sustainable market principle?
The word you use is the end in mind. I think that's actually the hardest thing at the moment. Whenever we get engaged in operational environments, we very rarely have the end in mind. We're dealing with the immediacy of the problem or the issue. But you're right. If we're looking at sustainability, we have to take it from a different perspective. We have to say, okay, well, what is this series of assets there to do? Should we actually even use those assets? Should we be looking at a slightly different solution? Should we be looking at storage as a way of balancing the grid in this instance?
Absolutely.
Or should we look at different digital systems? Yes, all of those things are all great. But what is it there to do? What is it? What's the outcome that we want? Do we want to have safer environments? Are we prepared to have maybe environments that are not as safe but are more flexible? What is it that we want to try and achieve?
And actually, how do we ensure that if we're starting with an end in mind, that we're not just doing it in, say, 5-year chunks, when our assets are going to last 40 or 50 years?
And part of that is where the problem lies, is we always have these views ahead that are a little bit too short for the type of environment that we have. We need to actually have a longer view in mind. But then that's also part of the problem, is because not everybody shares the same goal. So if I look at my assets, they are actually driven to achieve a particular safety outcome or service delivery outcome. But they're not there to actually fact deal with the connectivity issues that we are seeing, or they're not there to look at the new technologies that are coming on board. But if you take a longer view and a more holistic view and say, okay, well, that's the goal I want, maybe you would actually have a completely different mix of infrastructure and partners.
And with a long-term view, of course, you can start to realize maybe more of the inherent value and taking things out of service, being able to broadly clean them, maintain them, and put them back into service where they're still absolutely relevant and able to do a piece of work, but maybe not in its primary purpose.
I'm glad you said that, because actually when you look at transformers, they're an ideal candidate. They're 40 years in typical lifespan. Maybe at the end of the 25th year, maybe even on the 30th year, you take it out and put it into secondary activity. Or you take it back and you put it into a recommissioning cycle and you reuse it elsewhere as an interim. I know that's more work, but we need to start thinking about how we do that, because it's not always about buying net new.
Absolutely.
And somehow thinking it's going to save the planet. We have to look at reconditioning, recycling, relegating assets to secondary, tertiary roles, and then look at how do we drive it for 60 years.
And therefore realizing much more inherent value out of every asset, which is really what a networks business is about.